What if the very answer to your midnight prayer came to your doorstep, but you kicked it away? This is the story of a man who asked God for help, but rejected the gift because it did not look like gold. He wept, because when the truth was revealed, it was too late. He had prayed at midnight. The city hummed outside his windows, but inside his house was silence, except the sound of his own heavy breathing. Numbers had been chasing him for months. Clients refused to pay. A bank letter warned of debt. Daniel stared at the pile of invoices until the ink seemed to swim. At last, he folded his hands on the small kitchen table and whispered words he had not spoken in years. Lord, if this is from you, send a way out. Send something I can manage, something I can hold. That night, the rain began. It fell steady, washing the streets and beating against the roof like 1,000 small drums. Inside the house, Daniel sat alone at the kitchen table. He pressed his palms together, whispering broken prayers into the hum of the storm. By morning, the world smelled of wet earth and fresh pavement. And there, right on the porch of Daniel's fine house, sat a dirty, sealed, rusted metal box. It had not been there the night before. Daniel frowned. Annoyed, he kicked the box aside. "Who leaves trash like this at my door?" he muttered. His head was already filled with meetings, phone calls, and shame. He thought of how high he had risen in life. He told himself, "I don't touch things that smell of dirt or poverty." The box stayed in the corner of the porch, growing uglier with each passing day. Finally, Miriam, his wife, noticed it. She called his attention. "Daniel, why not open it?" But he shook his head sharply. "I don't open dirty things. If it had value, it would look valuable." Miriam stood quietly, her hand resting on the porch railing. The rain had softened into a drizzle, and the box sat there, damp and pitiful, yet strangely patient, like something waiting to be recognized. She looked at her husband with sorrow in her eyes, knowing his pride was their greatest challenge. The next morning, Miriam stood by the window, tea steaming in her hands. She had a gentler heart. She believed sometimes God spoke in quiet, strange ways. "Open it," she asked softly. "I told you," Daniel snapped. "I don't open dirty things." His words were sharp, like a door slamming shut. Before Miriam could step outside to look herself, Daniel shouted for the gardener. Kofi, the gardener, came slowly, hat in hand. He was sweeping the wet path when Daniel barked at him. "Take this shit away to the dump." The words echoed in the rain, quick and ugly. Kofi blinked. He had worked for Daniel for years. He knew rain always took its time. He also knew that sometimes treasures hid in things other people refused. So Kofi lifted the box carefully, almost as if it were fragile. But instead of throwing it away, he carried it to his small house. At first, even Kofi ignored it. It looked too rough, too muddy. Days went by. Then one evening, as he sat alone, he felt a whisper in his heart, "Open the box." He wiped the mud with his apron, as though he was cleaning a seed before planting. He forced the rusty lid open. Inside, wrapped in faded cloth, he found a folded letter, written in the trembling hand of a dying man. A sealed envelope, "To the one who is truly blessed of the Lord." Keys to a mansion. A legal deed for 5 acres of red land, stamped and signed. Transfer documents to a fat bank account. The letter told a story. A wealthy man, once poor, had been blessed by God. Before his death, God instructed him to give part of his wealth to strangers, people who might never expect such a gift. He wrote, "If you are reading this, you are now the owner of all I have placed here. Follow the instructions, redeem the gift, and when your own life is ending, do the same, bless strangers, and keep this circle alive." Kofi followed the instructions carefully. Soon, everything became his: the mansion, the land, the account. His life changed forever. Kofi never returned to Daniel's compound with his broom and cutlass. The once faithful gardener, who swept the leaves every morning and trimmed the flowers with quiet diligence, was now absent. At first, Daniel thought it was the rain or sickness. But day after day, the paths grew untidy, the hedges unkempt, and the familiar sound of Kofi's sweeping stick was gone. Daniel did not know that his gardener had been lifted by God into a new life. While Daniel's business collapsed, Kofi was now walking through marble halls, opening doors with keys he once only dreamed of. Curious, Miriam went to find him. She asked gently why he had left without a word. Kofi smiled humbly and told her the whole story. He showed her the deed, the house keys, and the papers. Miriam's hands trembled as Kofi finished his story. The mansion keys glistened in his palm, the deed papers lay heavy on the polished table. Her eyes burned, then spilled over. She wept, not only for the treasure lost, but for the arrogance that had blinded them. Miriam returned home with swollen eyes. Daniel, weary and restless, looked up from his chair. She tried to speak but her voice broke. At last, the words came in a rush: the box, the deed, the keys, the fortune that had slipped through his hands. Daniel's face drained of color. His chest heaved as if the air had betrayed him. The room spun, he staggered, clutching the arm of the chair. Then, like a tree cut at the root, he collapsed to the floor. Pride had built walls around his heart, but the weight of truth smashed them down. He had prayed for deliverance, and when it came, he had called it dirt. Moral of the story: blessings don't always shine when they arrive. Sometimes they look ordinary, even ugly. But hidden inside could be the very answer to your prayer. Don't despise small or dirty packages, God often wraps treasure in them. If this story spoke to you, please like, subscribe, share, and drop a comment below. Your engagement helps us spread these life-changing stories to more hearts.